I always thought being the reliable son would mean something to my mom. For 20 years I supported her financially, emotionally, and physically, while my brother Derek built his life in Seattle. I never complained about the sacrifices because I thought we were in this together. Then last Tuesday, while organizing her tax papers, I found her will. Everything from the house I helped pay for to family heirlooms was going to Derek. I confronted her, expecting some explanation. Instead, she looked me straight in the eye and said those words I will never forget. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from and hit that like button if you have ever felt taken for granted by family. Growing up in our middle-class Chicago suburb, I had what most would call a normal childhood. My parents worked hard to provide for Derek and me, making sure we never went without. Dad worked as an engineer, while Mom managed a small clothing boutique. Our family dynamic changed dramatically when I was 14 and Derek was 16. The arguments started small, barely noticeable at first, but gradually grew into full-blown shouting matches that would echo through our two-story house. The divorce papers came 6 months later. Dad packed his things and moved to California for a fresh start, leaving Mom to handle most of the parenting responsibilities. The child support checks came regularly at first, then sporadically until they stopped coming altogether. Mom never spoke badly about Dad to us, but I could see the strain in her eyes when bills piled up on the kitchen counter. Derek and I processed the divorce differently. He threw himself into football and his social circle, staying out late with friends and barely acknowledging the financial struggles at home. I took a different approach. At 15, I got my first job bagging groceries after school. My paycheck was small, but it helped with groceries and utilities. I remember the pride I felt handing Mom my first earnings, and the relief in her eyes as she accepted it. By senior year, Derek had secured a football scholarship to a prestigious university in Washington State. Mom beamed with pride at his graduation, taking dozens of photos and throwing him an elaborate party with money we could not spare. When my graduation came 2 years later, Mom was distracted with work, and my celebration consisted of a small dinner at our favorite local restaurant. While Derek moved across the country to start his college adventure, I chose the local state university. This decision was not based purely on academics, though I told everyone it was. The truth was more complicated. Mom had been diagnosed with early arthritis, making her job at the boutique increasingly difficult. Someone needed to help around the house, drive her to doctor appointments, and ensure bills were paid on time. That someone was me. Throughout college, I balanced a full course load with 2 part-time jobs. Unlike most students who spent their earnings on parties and spring break trips, most of my money went toward our household expenses. I paid Mom rent, though I never thought of it that way at the time. I saw it as contributing to our shared life, helping the woman who had raised me. After graduation, I secured an entry-level accounting position at a local firm. The salary was modest but stable. Though many of my classmates moved to downtown Chicago apartments with roommates, I continued living at home. Mom insisted she did not need me anymore, but the stack of medical bills on her desk told a different story. Her arthritis had worsened, requiring more expensive treatments and medications. That year, I helped Mom refinance the mortgage to lower the monthly payments. My name was not added to the deed, something I did not think to question at the time. I contributed to those monthly payments while also covering utilities and groceries. When the roof needed repairs after a particularly harsh winter, I dipped into my savings to cover the $6,000 expense. Meanwhile, Derek had secured a position as a financial analyst at a growing firm in Seattle. His visits home became increasingly rare, limited to brief appearances during Christmas and sometimes Thanksgiving. Yet despite his physical absence, his presence loomed large in our house. Mom proudly displayed his graduation photos, newspaper clippings of his college football achievements, and even printed his work emails announcing promotions or bonuses. My own achievements received polite acknowledgement, but never the same enthusiasm. When I received my promotion to senior accountant, Mom simply nodded and said, "That is nice, honey," then immediately asked if I had heard that Derek was being considered for a management position. I noticed these discrepancies in how she treated us, but I dismissed my feelings as petty jealousy. After all, Mom frequently reminded me how proud she was of my responsibility and dependability. Those words felt meaningful even if they lacked the excitement she reserved for Derek. I told myself she simply missed Derek more because he was far away while she saw me every day. As the years passed, my sacrifices accumulated. I postponed pursuing a master's degree that would have advanced my career. I ended a serious relationship with Jordan, a wonderful woman who wanted to move to Indianapolis for her dream job, but I could not leave Mom alone. I declined a promotion that would have required frequent travel. Each decision felt right at the time, rooted in my commitment to supporting Mom. I never expected gratitude or compensation for these choices. I was raised to believe family supports family, period. I assumed Mom and I were a team facing life's challenges together, and that my loyalty would be acknowledged in ways that mattered. I could not have been more wrong. Tax season always meant organizing Mom's paperwork. Her filing system consisted of shoving documents into various folders and drawers throughout the year. Every April, I would spend a weekend sorting through this chaos, creating neat piles for her tax preparer. This routine had become so familiar that I rarely paid attention to the actual content of the papers. That Tuesday night changed everything. I was organizing a folder labeled Financial Documents when I found a legal document from Harrington and Associates, Mom's longtime attorneys. The title caught my eye: Last Will and Testament of Eleanor Marie Adams, updated just 3 months earlier. I should have stopped reading right then. These were private documents after all. But something compelled me to continue, perhaps a subconscious awareness that I needed to know what was inside. As I scanned the pages, my stomach tightened into a knot. The house, the very one I had been helping pay for over the past decade, was being left entirely to Derek. The family heirlooms, including grandmother's antique jewelry collection and grandfather's pocket watch that I had always admired, all designated for Derek. Her investment portfolio, which I was shocked to discover, was worth nearly $200,000, also going to Derek. My inheritance consisted of her 7-year-old Toyota Camry and $5,000. I read the document 3 times, certain I had misunderstood something fundamental. But the language was clear and unambiguous. More disturbing than the uneven distribution was the discovery that Mom had substantial savings. For years, she had presented herself as financially struggling, in need of my constant support. I had lived under the impression that my contributions were essential for her survival, not optional assistance she could have managed without. That night, sleep evaded me entirely. I stared at the ceiling, replaying 20 years of sacrifices in excruciating detail. The job in Denver I had declined 5 years ago would have doubled my salary. The relationship with Jordan that fizzled because I could not leave Chicago. The savings account that should have contained enough for a down payment on my own home, instead depleted by Mom's roof repair, plumbing emergency, and property tax payments. Around 2 in the morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Derek. It was a photo of him and his girlfriend on a beach in Hawaii, cocktails in hand, with the caption, "Planning our next adventure to Bali this summer. Any recommendations?" As I stared at his carefree smile, something inside me hardened. While I was counting pennies and postponing my life, Derek was island hopping and planning exotic vacations. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. I needed time to gather my thoughts and evidence. I spent hours going through my financial records, finding bank statements, receipts, and canceled checks documenting my support of Mom. I calculated rough estimates of my contributions, approximately $87,000 in direct financial support over 12 years, plus countless hours of labor on home repairs and maintenance. I practiced what I would say to Mom, rehearsing different approaches. Should I be confrontational, or calm, accusatory, or inquisitive? By evening, I had settled on a strategy of factual presentation, followed by direct questions. No accusations, just a request for explanation. Mom returned from her book club at 7:30, surprised to find me waiting at the kitchen table with organized stacks of papers. "Samuel, what is all this?" she asked, hanging her coat on the rack by the door. "We need to talk, Mom. I found your will yesterday while organizing your tax documents." Her face immediately tensed. "You had no right to read my private papers. That was not meant for your eyes." "Maybe not, but I did see it. And I have questions." I kept my voice steady despite the anger bubbling beneath the surface. "Why is Derek receiving everything of value while I get almost nothing?" She sank into the chair across from me, defensive posture already taking shape. "It is my property, Samuel. I can distribute it however I see fit. Besides, Derek needs it more than you do. You are already financially stable. The irony of her statement was staggering. Financially stable. Only by sacrificing every opportunity for advancement. I have been helping pay your mortgage for 12 years, Mom. I covered the roof, repair the plumbing issues, and half your monthly expenses. All while believing you were struggling financially. That is what family does, Samuel. You help each other. Does Derek help? I push several bank statements toward her. These are my contributions, just from last year, over $16,000. What did Derek contribute? Your brother has his own expenses, his own life to build. Mom snapped. He cannot just write checks from across the country. But I am expected to put my life on hold indefinitely, I asked. Did you know? I turned down a job in Denver that would have advanced my career significantly, or that Jordan and I broke up because I would not consider moving away from Chicago. Away from you. I never asked you to make those sacrifices. She said quietly. You did not have to ask, Mom. You cultivated a situation where I felt responsible for your well-being. You made me believe you needed my financial support to survive. Now I discover you have substantial savings and investments all going to Derek, who rarely even calls you, let alone helps with anything. The conversation deteriorated from there. Mom accused me of being selfish and materialistic, caring only about what I would inherit rather than her well-being. I pointed out that inheritance was not the issue, but rather the years of implied financial need that had shaped my major life decisions. We talked in circles until Mom stood up abruptly. I will not justify my choices to you, Samuel. This conversation is over. She retreated to her bedroom, leaving me alone with my stacks of evidence, and a growing sense that 20 years of my life had been built on manipulation. I packed up my papers and drove back to my apartment, the modest one-bedroom I rented because I could not afford better while supporting 2 households. I did not sleep that night either. The fallout came swiftly. The next morning, Mom called Derek to complain about my behavior. By lunchtime, my phone was buzzing with his name on the screen. I answered, prepared for the onslaught. What the hell? Sam Derek's voice boomed through the speaker. You made Mom cry over money. Real classy. You do not know the whole story, Derek. I kept my voice level despite the rage building inside. I know enough. Mom said you went through her private papers and threw a fit when you saw her will. Since when did you get so greedy? This was typical. Derek charging into situations with half the information and twice the confidence. Let me ask you something, I said. How much money have you sent Mom in the past year? That is none of your business, he retorted. How about in the past 5 years, any idea what her monthly expenses are? Do you know she needed a new water heater last winter, or that her property taxes went up 12%? There was a brief pause before Derek responded. Mom never mentioned needing money. She always tells me everything is fine when I ask. That opening gave me the chance to suggest a 3-way call. Surprisingly, Derek agreed. 30 minutes later, the 3 of us were on the line together, and the real revelations began. Mom, I have a simple question, I said once the awkward greetings were finished. Have you told Derek about your financial situation over the years? About needing help with the mortgage, utilities, and repairs? I do not understand why you are doing this, Samuel. Mom replied, her voice tight with anger. Derek jumped in. Wait, has Sam been supporting you financially? You told me your pension and savings were enough to cover everything. The tension on the line was palpable, as Mom stammered through an explanation. Well, Samuel volunteered to help with some expenses. I never asked him to. Volunteered. I could not believe what I was hearing. Mom, you literally called me crying when you could not make the mortgage payment in 2017. You showed me past due notices for the electricity. You had me drive you to apply for assistance programs. There was a long silence before Derek spoke again, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. Mom, you told me Samuel was doing great financially. You said he stayed in Chicago because he loved his job and apartment. You never mentioned he was supporting you. The conversation quickly devolved into revelations that stunned us both. Mom had told Derek I volunteered financial help despite my own stability and success. Meanwhile, she had presented Derek to me as unwilling to help despite frequent requests. The reality was that she had created entirely different narratives for each of us. The most devastating moment came when Mom finally admitted the truth behind her decisions. Samuel has always been stronger, more independent. Derek needs me more. He needs this security for his future. You will be fine no matter what, Samuel. You always land on your feet. Those words cut through me like a knife. My reliability, responsibility, and sacrifices were not assets in her eyes, but rather justifications for taking me for granted. Being the dependable son had made me expendable in the distribution of both her affection and her estate. After that explosive call, I needed perspective from someone who knew our family history. I visited Aunt Patricia, Dad's sister, who had remained close to all of us despite the divorce. Over coffee in her sunlit kitchen, she confirmed what I had begun to suspect. Mom's favoritism toward Derek was not new. It started when Derek was born, Aunt Patricia explained, stirring honey into her tea. He was colicky, needed more attention. Your mother developed a pattern of catering to him that never really stopped. Your father mentioned it several times during their marriage. This pattern, Aunt Patricia revealed, was part of why Dad had eventually left. He could not bear watching the unequal treatment continue into our teenage years. He had tried to compensate by spending extra time with me, but after the divorce and his move to California, his influence waned. Armed with this historical context, I reached out to old family friends who confirmed similar observations. Mrs. Jensen, who had lived next door during my childhood, recalled how Mom would attend all of Derek's football games, but frequently missed my academic competitions due to claimed scheduling conflicts. The most painful discovery came when I was clearing out some old boxes from Mom's basement. I found a container labeled Samuel's School Things that contained only a handful of report cards and a single art project from second grade. In contrast, Derek's memorabilia filled 3 large storage bins, preserving everything from kindergarten finger paintings to college term papers. These discoveries solidified my understanding that what I had experienced was not isolated incidents but a lifelong pattern. The realization was both painful and liberating, giving me clarity about what needed to happen next. I arranged a final conversation with Mom, suggesting dinner at her house where we could talk privately. She agreed, perhaps hoping for reconciliation. Instead, I arrived with a comprehensive financial record of my support over the years, now totaling over $175,000. As we sat at the dining table I had helped her purchase 10 years earlier, I placed the folder between us. I have made a decision, Mom, I said calmly. I am accepting a position in Denver that I was recently offered. I will be moving at the end of the month. Mom's fork clattered against her plate. Denver. But that is so far away. What about me? What about the house and all your responsibilities here? That is what I want to discuss, I replied, opening the folder. These are records of my financial contributions over the past 12 years, totaling $175,422. I will no longer be providing any financial support. The color drained from her face as she glanced at the figures. You cannot just abandon me because you are upset about the will. That is childish. This is not about inheritance, Mom. This is about recognizing an unhealthy pattern that has shaped my entire adult life. I have put my needs, my career, and my relationships second to yours, believing you needed me. But you have savings, investments, and a pension. You do not actually need my financial support, you just preferred having it. Mom attempted to interrupt, but I continued. I am returning your house key today. I have already removed my auto payments from your accounts. The mortgage, utilities, and other expenses will be your responsibility moving forward. Or perhaps Derek can help, since he will be inheriting everything. Her shock quickly turned to anger, then panic, as the practical implications sank in. You cannot do this, Samuel. The mortgage is too much for me alone. And what about when things break? Who will fix them? You have options, Mom. You can sell this house and downsize to something more manageable. You can use some of your investments. Or you can ask Derek to start contributing, since he will ultimately benefit from the property value. I remained calm throughout her escalating emotional responses. Derek called during our conversation, and Mom immediately put him on speakerphone, expecting him to take her side as usual. But having learned about the extent of my support and Mom's manipulations, even Derek seemed uncertain. "So you expect me to start sending money every month?" Derek asked after Mom explained the situation. "I have my own mortgage and expenses out here. Welcome to my world for the past 12 years," I replied simply. For the first time in our adult lives, Derek had no quick comeback. The realization that he might need to step into the role I had filled seemed to genuinely surprise him. Neither of them had ever considered a future where I was not the financial safety net. The aftermath of my decision brought immediate challenges and unexpected freedom. Within a week of that final dinner, I had secured an apartment in Denver and given notice at my Chicago firm. My colleagues were surprised but supportive, many admitting they had wondered why I had declined advancement opportunities in the past. The calls from Mom began the day after I removed my auto payments from her accounts. The first mortgage payment she faced alone triggered a panic attack that led to tearful voicemails about betrayal and abandonment. The electricity bill, property taxes, and water bill each prompted similar reactions. I listened to each message, acknowledged the difficulty of her adjustment, but maintained my boundary. Derek called too, initially angry that I had thrown our mother into financial turmoil. But as he worked through the practical realities with her, his perspective began to shift. "Did you really pay for the new furnace installation last year?" he asked during one call. "That must have cost a fortune." $16,400, I confirmed. Plus, I took 3 days off work to oversee the contractors. His whistling sound of disbelief was oddly validating. "I had no idea, man. She always made it sound like everything was under control. Those first few weeks were the hardest. The guilt was overwhelming at times. I had been conditioned for 2 decades to believe Mom's well-being was my responsibility. Every distressed call triggered an instinct to solve the problem, to send money, to sacrifice. But with support from my new therapist, Dr. Wallace, I held firm. Living alone in Denver was an adjustment. For the first time in my adult life, my paycheck went entirely toward my own expenses and savings. The freedom was dizzying. I could buy new clothes without calculating how it would affect Mom's prescription coverage. I could plan a vacation without worrying about who would drive Mom to her doctor appointments. I could date without the constraint of needing to stay in Chicago. 6 months into my new life, the changes were significant for everyone. I had received a promotion at the Denver firm, confirming that my career had indeed been held back in Chicago. I had made friends through a local hiking group and had gone on several dates with Alicia, a software developer I met at a coffee shop. Mom had been forced to make substantial changes too. She took a part-time position at a local bookstore to supplement her income. She put the house on the market, preparing to move to a smaller condo that would be more manageable both physically and financially. Most significantly, she had begun therapy at Derek's insistence, slowly recognizing the patterns that had damaged our family. Derek had stepped up, more than I had expected. While not providing the level of support I had, he had started contributing monthly toward Mom's expenses and had helped research more affordable housing options. During our increasingly frequent calls, he admitted to feelings of guilt about his own absence and lack of awareness. The first holiday season away from family was both liberating and melancholy. I declined Mom's invitation to return to Chicago for Thanksgiving, choosing instead to join friends for a Friendsgiving celebration in Denver. I sent Mom and Derek gift cards for Christmas with brief but cordial notes, maintaining the distance I knew was necessary for my healing. My journey towards self-forgiveness was perhaps the most challenging aspect of this transition. In therapy, I worked through deep-seated beliefs about family obligation and my own worth. Dr. Wallace helped me understand that setting boundaries was not abandonment, but rather a necessary step toward healthier relationships. I had spent most of my life believing that my value was tied to what I could provide, what I could sacrifice. Learning to recognize my inherent worth apart from caregiving was a profound shift. I began to see how enabling behavior had perpetuated unhealthy dynamics, how my constant rescuing had prevented Mom from developing independence, and Derek from assuming responsibility. Gradually, cautiously, communication with Mom evolved. Her initial messages filled with guilt trips and accusations gave way to more respectful exchanges. 3 months after my move, she sent an email that contained the first acknowledgement of her role in our dysfunctional family system. "I have been unfair to you for many years," she wrote. "My therapist is helping me see patterns I was blind to before. I am not asking for financial help again, but I would like a chance to develop a healthier relationship if you are open to it someday. I responded with appreciation for her insight, but maintained that I needed more time and space. Our communication remained limited to occasional texts and brief phone calls on birthdays or holidays. Each exchange was a small test of whether new boundaries would be respected. Derek and I developed a different kind of brotherhood, one based on adult understanding, rather than competition for Mom's attention. During a video call around the 9-month mark, he made a confession that would have seemed impossible a year earlier. "You know what is crazy," he said. "I always envied you growing up. Mom was all over my activities and achievements. But Dad clearly preferred spending time with you. I thought you were his favorite, and I resented it back then." The irony of our parallel experiences prompted a laugh that felt like releasing decades of tension. Neither of us had recognized the other's struggles while living them. Now, with distance and perspective, we could begin to rebuild a relationship based on truth rather than the roles we had been assigned in childhood. As the 1-year anniversary of my move to Denver approached, I reflected on how dramatically my life had changed. I had purchased my first home, a small but modern condo with mountain views. I had advanced in my career to a position I likely would not have achieved for years in Chicago. My relationship with Alicia had deepened into something meaningful and reciprocal. Most importantly, I had learned to distinguish between genuine need and manipulation, between healthy sacrifice and self-destruction. I found freedom in setting boundaries and peace in prioritizing my well-being. The guilt that once consumed me had diminished to occasional twinges rather than a constant companion. Mom ultimately sold the house and moved into a 1-bedroom condo near her sister. She continued working part-time at the bookstore, finding unexpected fulfillment in the social connections and purpose it provided. Derek visited her more frequently, their relationship adjusting to new realities and responsibilities. Our family would never have the close-knit, harmonious dynamic portrayed in holiday movies. Too much history, too many ingrained patterns stood in the way of complete healing. But we were slowly building something new, something based on honesty and mutual respect rather than obligation and martyrdom. I no longer measure my worth by what I sacrifice for others. I have learned that recognizing your own value is not selfish but necessary. Building a life centered on reciprocity rather than obligation has brought me peace I never thought possible. My story is not about abandoning family, but about finding the strength to love myself enough to require respect, appreciation, and fairness in all my relationships, even the most fundamental ones. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took you for granted? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming family challenges. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to break unhealthy patterns even when it hurts.